Welcome back to the American Dream Podcast. I am your host, Elias Torres, and on this show, I talk with underrepresented leaders about their pursuit of the American dream and how we can help more people achieve their own. The American dream looks a little different for everyone, and for our guest today, it looked like having palm trees in his backyard. Now, there are palm trees everywhere he lives. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Guillermo Diaz Jr., founder and CEO of Conectado Incorporated, an organization he built to create change at scale. We talk about Guillermo's early days in Colorado and how he became the CIO of Cisco and why he left his C-suite positions to start Conectado. Welcome, Guillermo, to the show. Bienvenido.
Thanks for having me.
So what is this? What I see? You should see my out my window. It's just a whole bunch of snow.
Yeah.
I see palm trees behind you. Where
You're
are
in
you?
San Diego. I mean, that's as cold as you're gonna get here. It's a cold 71 degrees here in San Diego. My other house
Mm-hmm.
is in Maui, so that's about 81 degrees over there. So, the one of the things I grew up in Colorado. I think I may have told you, but and I always said growing up is the one thing that I never have been around is palm trees. So wherever I
Yeah.
live, when I grow up, I'm gonna have a palm tree in my house. So that's that's the one thing that you'll always see, and wherever in any of my houses since I've been an adult, I've always had a palm tree, or I planted a palm tree in my house.
I love that. I love that. I like that a lot. That's pretty cool. It's. I was gonna call you a wimp for just being in the warm weather all the time, but there's something special about palm trees. I was just in Costa Rica last year in March, not just,
Hmm.
but it's so nice to go out from the front yard, in the backyard of the house to the beach, and like a whole bunch of palm trees.
Yeah.
It's such a special feeling. Those are not tiny palm
No,
trees.
this is
Those
these
are
are
those
these
look
are
like
legit palm trees, and these are
yeah.
yeah. Uh,
This I like. I appreciate that. This show is called The American Dream, and I say that the American dream
hmm
is not one dream, but it's multiple dreams. I don't know. I like to dream
Yeah.
incrementally. You know, when I first came, I was like, I just need a little house. I need somewhere to live,
Yeah.
right? And and then I think that there's this level 8 or level 11 is big ass palm tree in my all my house. I mean,
And it's it's interesting you say it that way because that was a dream. I mean, even though as I mean, I don't know if it's silly as it sounds. When I grew up in the east side of Pueblo, Colorado, and in a mostly Hispanic town. Is how more than half of the town is Hispanic, mostly from Mexican origin. And people ask me all the time, "Hey, you must ski." I'm like, "We didn't have skiing in southern Pueblo, Colorado." One, two, not a lot of money growing up, but I always said is like, wherever I grow up, wherever I live, I'm gonna have a palm tree in my house. I have to have it, because I remember when I went to the Navy, right out of high school, and my first year in my first base leaving Colorado. I never really went to a lot of places, but was San Diego, California. And the coming out of boot camp, you kind of have um, your freedom, your liberty for for a week at least. And it was Christmas time. It was around the Christmas time, and I saw these palm trees with lights, and I was like, I'd never seen that before. And I said, for sure, I'm gonna have these palm trees in my house. Yeah,
I love that. It's not about the size of the house. It's not about that. But the palm tree means a
yeah.
lot, right? It means weather. It means location. It means
For me, it meant a
that
dream,
that.
like you said, American dream, right?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Tell us a little bit more about like growing up. I like that. That you cannot get more Latino than that.
Yeah,
You're like, I'm Latino in Colorado and I don't ski. It's like it's just never a thing. It's kind of like sometimes people in the islands are like, you go to the beach all the time? No, we don't go to the
yeah,
beach.
yeah,
I lived in Florida. No, I didn't want to go to the beach. I just
yeah,
worked. It's like People are like, you have hobbies? No, I work. It's like a second job, school job. Either school at night
Yeah.
or school during the day.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about growing up. What was it like? Tell us your
Mm-hmm.
journey and like where did you start finding your path?
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Pueblo, Colorado. My dad was an immigrant from Mexico City. My mom was born she was born in southern Colorado, but she was born in the Mexican camps. They had Mexican camps there of the people that worked in the railroads, especially at that time. My abuelita worked in the railroads, so they had Mexican camps. So she was born in there, um, and then ultimately they met in Pueblo, Colorado, and that's where I was born. But my dad died when I was a year and a half. I was not even a year and a half, and my brother was about 4 months old, I think. And so my mom raised us, and she ultimately remarried. So I had a stepdad who was my dad. But just growing up, we didn't have a lot of money. We were a relative back then. But what I did know is that I was going to get a college degree. That was the one thing that I knew that I was going to do. How, I have no idea. So my mom and we looked around, and it's like, I don't know how we're going to do this. So I said, "Look, I'm going to go to the military." So I was 17 when I signed up to the U.S. Navy, and I went to, um, I signed up with this job called telecommunications, and it was a technology job. I had done, in high school, I'd done electronics, so I really liked that. But I had no idea that that was going to be a really, you know, piece of my career. And so I went to the Navy, went through boot camp, and then I ended up in this school, in the electronics school, going through that, and then working as a telecommunications specialist. And I did that for 4 years, to get money to go to school. So when I got out of the Navy is when I really started college. I didn't really start until I was 21 years old, 22 almost. And I started in community college because that's all I could afford at the time. And then ultimately got my bachelor's degree. So that's sort of the early part of my journey, and that whole technology, telecommunications, um, foundation. And then the other thing, was, in Pueblo, most of my friends look like us, right? I mean, this is how we rolled. But in the
You mean good
yeah,
looking,
so
handsome, great?
exactly.
Oh,
And but most of the people I knew in the Navy didn't, right? 80% were other. So I had to learn how
yeah.
to deal with other cultures, other people, um, and I think those two things with technology, and I guess diversity and connecting with other cultures were really the foundation for the rest of my career, right?
The whole concept of going to school is a controversial
Mm-hmm.
topic. I mean, I don't know. I kind of flip sides all the time on it,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that. What do you think? Is it required for what you did?
When I got out of the Navy, um, I would say at that point in time, it was for a technology job, especially. By the way, when I got out of the Navy, I was in Silicon Valley. I was in Alameda, California. So luckily, I think that's serendipity. I was a technology guy in a technology area in the world, right? And so, but I think at that point in time, it was like, you know, yeah, you kind of need a degree, even though I didn't have one. So somebody took a
Yeah.
chance on me, and I kind of went in and sold my way into the tech job, and then I grew into it. But I think, at that point in time, it was a requirement. If I look back, and we can get into what I'm doing now with Conectado, is we're doing alternate pathways, which is, yeah, we want you to, we're not discouraging you from having a degree,
Yeah.
but we also are like, we're doing boot camps. We're doing boot camps around AI and bioinformatics and those types of things that are more micro certifications, or more things
Yeah.
that are related to real world shit that you are working on today, right? So
So,
I think today I would say I'm a little bit, I'm always going to say, get your education. I'm always going to say that. Is it required? I'm on the fence. From a college degree, I think it's I think it's and. I think you should have a college degree, and you should make sure that you're learning these real world um, technologies, these real world challenges, because those are the
oh
things
yeah.
that are going to help you accelerate, right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think if I wanted to be controversial, but I would say no degree.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality that really depends on the context, right? It depends on. I, I should practice, spend more time on this, but I've convinced many people that work for me during school to drop out of
Mm-hmm.
school because they were already so good they were not going to learn
Yeah.
anything new, right? But that is at a high level. It's an upper echelon of engineers that were studying computer science, but they were already quite capable enough and knew enough that they didn't need to finish. I've done that many times, but I don't encourage everyone to do
Mm-hmm.
that, right? I mean, I think there's some people I'm like, no, you know what? Just spend a couple more years. I think the Latino population is so large, right? That Latino, Black, that we're not saying to Latinos, don't get a CS degree
Yeah.
and just jump into the world. But we're talking about in general education,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like how can you get into the business world? How could you get into better jobs, right? And I think that there's as much to do with hustling and networking and
Yeah.
connections, being connected, than in micro certifications or training,
Mm-hmm.
small trainings, small apprenticeships
Mm-hmm.
that you will do much better than just a degree,
Yeah.
because schools don't teach us much. But I think there's something to it where it's like to some people, it's a milestone. It's something that shows your
Yeah.
focus and the ability to say like, okay, I'm gonna get this done. The problem is that it's a tough hurdle to get people across, and they end up in debt.
Mm-hmm.
That might not be the best
Yeah.
test of their perseverance or their
Yeah.
persistence, right?
Yeah. I mean, when I had enough money, because of the military and the scholarships I got there, to go to school, but I also looked and said, hey, I'm going to take the same classes if I went to that 4 year university, and it's going to cost me a lot of money. And I ended up going to a community college. It was like I don't know what it is today, but back then it was $3.50 a unit, right? So I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm gonna, at least for the first year and a half to 2 years, I'm gonna go and do that so I can get, those credits under my belt, and then I could move to a better school, or a 4 year university or whatever. But that's one of the things I would say too, is like, hey, don't discard the community college route. I mean, that's the way I went. I
yeah,
ended up being the
yeah.
CIO at Cisco, and so if I can do it, why not you, right?
Exactly, exactly. That's the thing. I just saw something about the GM of the Dallas Cowboys or the Detroit Lions or
Mm-hmm.
something, and he hustled into a little job into some of the rooms, video rooms or something or whatever. Yeah, he was just being an assistant to the assistant to the
Yeah.
assistant to the assistant. Exactly. And so, no, I agree. I'm doing something coaching at USF on something about college advisors and saying that it's a big unlock to take as many classes as you can at community
Mm-hmm.
college, cheaper cost, transfer, and then just take the right classes you need to get the 4 year
Yeah.
degree. that could be really helpful to a lot of people,
Yeah.
right? Uh, and that kind of stuff. It's a
You,
good hack. So wait,
you know
what
what?
is this?
One
Okay,
thing on that though, I think one of the things that I found too is that um, so we're working with some students at Berkeley now, and the students that are the transfer students have more like fire, have more like it's really interesting because they didn't like go right out of high school and go into Berkeley. They had to work their asses off and get to there, and it's there's something about that that is just like, hey, I had to work here. Now I'm going to do everything I can to stay here, but I've but there's lessons that I've learned along the way too, right?
yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's I
Yeah.
don't know. It's just the only way to appreciate what you
Mm-hmm.
have. If you have to,
Right.
if you have a tough time getting it, if you're denied of it, and that's the anti entitlement, that the Latinos, uh, we get the privilege of of, of
Yeah.
of not having entitlement because
Yeah.
it's just the only path that
Yeah.
we have, right?
That's right.
And so, yeah, no, that's something. That's a big unlock for us to turn it into an advantage instead of a
Yeah.
disadvantage, right?
Yeah.
And know it means a lot more to us. Well, besides palm trees and houses and Maui and San Diego, tell me about this CIO of Cisco
Mm-hmm.
story. What's going on? I like that. Like to see a brother go
Yeah.
all the way up.
Well, I ended up, like I said, when I got out of the Navy, I ended up in Silicon Valley. So I got a job at a company called Elza, which is a pharmaceutical, it was a pharmaceutical company, and it ultimately got acquired by Johnson and Johnson. But I was the telecom manager. I mean, it was like three people, right? But I was able to really, connect and understand the valley, and I was like the only Latino that I knew in technology. Um, but then I got recruited by a company called Silicon Graphics, SGI, which is kind of like the Nvidia meets Pixar of those days, right? And and it was a cool place to be. But I kind of grew through the ranks in technology, IT, and then worked very closely with Cisco. Cisco was our partner to build out the network, and then I in '99 I got recruited by Cisco in 1999, and I went in as a senior manager. So back then it was like, oh man, I'm a senior manager at Cisco. But then just growing through the ranks is like I went in, I was running the infrastructure, the network, the built out. The at that point in time we were starting off on this thing called electronic commerce, and e-commerce was. I remember at Cisco it was two servers, and they were running. I think we got up to $1 billion in transactions, and at best you had one server running at one time because they were failing over to each other all the time. But we re-architected that, and we were, Cisco was, people a lot of people don't know this, but Cisco was probably one of the OGs of electronic commerce, because that's how we had
Yeah,
to run our business, and we built a partner network. um, and building out that infrastructure, building out the architecture for e-commerce, and then that grew from $1 billion into $10 billion, and then we had to re-architect it
yeah,
again and build it out again, and that turned into $20 billion, and then that turned into 30 and 40, and but along the way, I you know I still remember this. In around 2005, I was a senior director, and someone told me, "Hey, you're the infrastructure guy. You're known as the network guy. you should go to the business side and you should learn the applications. And I'm like, why would I do that? I can see everything from this side, right? And I work with all the BUs, I work with everyone. And finally, they convinced me. He's like, no, go take this job. We really need you to do it because there's a big problem over there, and we think you could do it. So I went to work on the application side in the services business of Cisco, and I learned something um, that I say IDKS, that I didn't know shit when I went to the application side. I thought I knew what they knew, but I didn't really understand their perspective. And so
Yeah.
I went to that side, started learning, the application side, and then that turned into more and more responsibility. So I took over the sales groups and then the manufacturing groups. So probably by 2010, I had done almost every job in IT in the technology side, and then there was and, and then they made me responsible for all of the applications and all of the architecture, and I had already done the infrastructure side. So when it was time to kind of change guard from the CEO level, we had a CEO named John Chambers, and then that he's he got replaced by Chuck Robbins, and then the next, sort of like the chess pieces started moving, and they said, we need to look at the CIO role, and and I still remember this. I didn't interview for the job. I guess I was already interviewing for the job, and they called me up and said, "Hey, are you ready?" John Chambers and Rebecca Jacoby, who was the CIO that moved to COO, she said, are you ready?" And I'm like,
Wow.
"Are you?" I had a good relationship. "Are you ready?" "Gee, are you ready?" "I'm ready." They said, "Okay, well then we're ready to tell you that you're the CIO at Cisco." And it was like, that was like a moment. I mean, I don't know. It's like the kid that grows up in the Bronx that ends up pitching for the New York Yankees.
For the Yankees, yeah.
And so that kid that was the tech guy that grew up in the Navy and learned about tech and ended up as an early Latino in Silicon Valley, and now you're the CIO of probably, in my opinion, of course, is one of the best companies, especially in the Silicon Valley, right? And
Absolutely.
so that's how that, just learning, not just, I thought I knew the one job that was going to help me get there, but it wasn't. It was probably gonna keep me at a certain level, maybe VP. Maybe I would get to senior VP level, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
get the the CIO level job. So moving and taking that mentorship and that sponsorship from someone that believed in me, and I went and did that, and it was a risk, but it was also the right thing to do for the long term, right?
No, I think it's congratulations. I get the goosebumps when I like that call. Right, you're ready. Right, and it's a beautiful thing, right? When, especially for a Latino, that you put in the work, you went through the ranks, meritocracy, right? They recognize you, they didn't discriminate you, and John calls you uh, before leaving, right? And Chuck, so I met Chuck. We connected in Cabos, you and I, at the Worldwide
Hmm.
Technologies Conference, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, it's like that's another American dream, to have done that. It's funny because in 1999, I just joined IBM,
Mm,
and I was working for John Patrick, who's the guy who named the ThinkPad.
okay.
So he was the VP of Internet Technologies at
Mm,
IBM. So I was doing all the things. We had the IBM.com website,
Yeah.
we had instant messaging, and I was his assistant. He had like he would take tutelage mentorship of like an engineer, so he took me under his wing, and he didn't take me to too many places because he got busy. But the dream of the beginning is like, Elias, I just
Yeah.
started, and they say you're his next tech assistant
Yeah.
type of thing, but you will go with him on
Yeah.
trips, you know, and,
Well, that's, you
and
learn, and
yeah,
part of it, I think, is when you did that, you also built a relationship that is like, it's not just about
yeah,
the work, it's about the
yeah,
relationship, and now it's like, hey, I got your back and you got my back. It's the And I call it the ships. I'm a Navy guy, so I call it the ships, right? The sponsorships, the
yeah.
relationships that
Oh,
turn into scholarships or internships or apprenticeships, right? Partnerships, right?
partnerships.
And
I like that. I like that. That's so cool. But the story is I was in Chicago, and he went to spoke at a conference where John spoke, John
okay,
Chambers, and that was one of my first like a little like what is it called,
start,
like star eyes. Like I had this like awestruck,
yeah,
starstruck,
yeah,
and I'm like, oh, I'm like the assistant. I would be like, because I would make his presentation using Lotus
oh
Notes this
gosh,
before.
yeah,
And so like I would make it with custom
oh
HTML.
wow,
And so like because he was talking about the internet, and his pitch was only 1% of the world's population is on the
right,
internet at
right,
this time. So and John was talking about obviously
yeah,
networking and routers and e-commerce. IBM had that e-commerce push too, right? And so those were the
yeah,
days. And then John spoke, and I was backstage, and John walked by, and I was like, wow, like
oh
this is
yeah,
CEO of Cisco.
yeah. I
And
mean,
I
those,
I was like 22 or
yeah,
something.
yeah, wow, that's and I think you see that and you get, it's like they didn't look like us, right? But the cool thing is, and people ask me this all the time, it's like, hey, luckily, maybe it was personality, maybe it was the drive that they saw in us, that it's like, hey, I'm willing to put this guy under my wing because I know he's going to perform. Because the thing I
Yeah,
tell about sponsorships is, don't make no mistake, is like when somebody sponsors you, they're putting their badge on the line for you, their name on the line for
yeah.
you. And if you don't deliver, then it's not going to look good for them either. So the
The thing that people don't realize is that how rare is to find the person that delivers,
hmm
right? That follows
hmm
through. It's in the world,
Yep.
regardless of
Right.
race, right? Regardless of any. It's like you go and you're like finding the people that are solid is the dream that people like us are looking for, the executives, the leaders, right? And so like when you find that person, you build this trust that now you can make
Yeah.
mistakes, but now you
It's
just keep
yeah.
delivering, and you're gonna get more shots, and so like more opportunities, and people don't realize, and I do it all the time. I mean, like especially in hiring, I go after people, and then they're like they say yes, and then they're like, well, they don't show up, or they're like they want more money, or they want this, and they just make it complicated.
hmm
Versus the person that says
Yeah.
yes, you're like I need Guillermo right now. Are you
Yeah.
ready? Are you ready? If you had started saying, well, my kids, well, they're still doing high school and I want to spend time with them, and like, well, hold on, like, I don't know. I'm like, I need to make a
Yeah.
payment for this house in San Diego. I want to live
hmm
there, or like, well, we need to go to. I wanted to take this
Yeah.
degree. Are you
Yeah. You
ready?
better
What's
be.
the answer?
Yeah.
There's only one
Exactly.
answer. There's only one
Yeah,
answer.
there's only one answer. And for me, I
Yeah,
remember that day. I was like, "Are you ready?" And luckily, I had, to your point, I had built that cushion with them to go, "Are you ready? Right? You're ready for
yeah,
me,
yeah.
right?"
Are you ready?
And this is, I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't have to tell you, but like I was telling this to one of, and again, in my opinion, probably one of the best CEOs that ever lived, and
Yes.
and he's just like, gee, Are you ready? And I'm like, I'm ready. And that's when, I didn't know exactly, I kind of knew, but I didn't know exactly what words were going to come next. And they're just like, you're putting our badge on the line for you. My team grew overnight from, I had about 500 people on my team at that time, and it grew. The technology team at Cisco was almost 7,500 people, and so
Jeez.
the overnight it was, and I went back, and it was something that my abuelita always told me was like, someone's going to change the world, why not you? And I went back to my room that night, and my I was just like, holy shit, how am I going to do this? I didn't tell them that, but I was thinking to myself. And then I called up my assistant, my admin at the time, Tracy, and I said, what the hell am I going to do? And she says, dude, what do you always tell people? This is words that are coming out of your mouth. You always tell them someone is going to do it. Someone's going to do that job. Someone's going to get that degree.
Yeah,
Why not you?
yeah,
Right? Why not you?
yeah.
And I was like, gosh, you flipped it around on me,
Right. It's
Yeah,
smart. It's
yeah.
smart. I love that. I really love it because I think that people are scared,
Hmm.
right? Or people are insecure, right? And the truth is that when you see it, you see non-Latinos get the job, and like some of these jobs, there's already a system in
Yeah.
place, right? It already works, it already functions. It's like it's kind of hard to screw it up,
Hmm.
right? It's possible, but it's kind of hard to screw it up. But somebody else will do it, and regardless, it's not going to be that great
Yeah.
either. You know what I mean? So, but we're insecure about it. And like somebody else is going to do it. If you don't do that, somebody sits there
Yeah.
quickly, and easily does 3 or 4 years as
Yeah.
CIO, and even if they're not like great or anything
Yeah.
like that, right? So why not
Yeah.
you? It's like, and then but you have the drive to you have the vulnerability, you have the humility, you have the hunger, the chip,
Hmm.
and all the things that make you so much
Yeah.
better. But there's a moment, but you can't just spring into that CIO job. It took you 20 years, right?
Yeah.
You can't just
And and
um,
and
you
and
would not.
moving into things that I probably didn't see myself, but someone saw in me, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna go do that. And then when I saw the bridge from the other side, then I go, okay, now I'm gonna go make sure that I do that one and that one and that one, because if I stay in the same place, it's not going to help me in the long term.
Yeah,
So every year and a half, 2 years, I would get new or move to a new responsibility, and that gave me a much bigger kind of purview, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I love this story. That's amazing. I didn't know that. I didn't
Mm,
know the story. I run into you a couple of
yeah.
times, and we connected through OpenAI. Tell me, what are you doing now? You no longer CIO?
I'm not CIO. So I left Cisco after almost 21 years. And so the one thing that I didn't mention along my Cisco journey, I also launched the back early 2001, I think. We launched the ERG, Employee Resource Group, the Latino one, and I launched a veteran, or I helped launch a veterans one. But the Latino one was called Conexión, and Conexión was, taking the whole notion of networking and connection. Cisco was a connector, but we wanted to make sure that the Latinos had a voice inside of Cisco and then outside of Cisco. Um, so I launched that. So I was doing that. I was also leading a lot of the diversity efforts there. So I saw a lot of the need, especially in Silicon Valley, that was, even to this day, is Silicon Valley's, 28% of Silicon Valley are Latino, 42% of Silicon Valley students, K through 12, are Latino, but there's only 4% representation in technology. in in the heart of tech, where it's, a good majority of the students are and the population are Latino. And in California, it gets even worse because it's 56% K through 12 students are Latino. So I saw that need, and I was like, um, I'm at a point in my life where I have done, more like you. I mean, you're the ejemplo for me. Is like I've done more than I ever even imagined. I have more palm trees than I ever imagined I would have. So it was important for me to how we go back and reach down and pull the next ones up. And if I look at the numbers, like you mentioned, the numbers are huge. We're the fastest growing. We're the second largest demographic, and I do a lot of data around this. I was also the chair of an organization called High Tech, which is Hispanic Technology Executive Council, and I just left that post this January, or yeah, um, and so I saw all the, how you look at technology, how you look at diversity, and how you look at community. But I saw a need that from the classroom to career to growth in the career to the boardroom, there was a disconnect, especially within the Latino demographic. And so I said, how do we use technology to help accelerate those that are, and I try not to use underrepresented because I want to increase representation. I want to look at the world from the glass is half full. And how do we use technology, especially the technology that the current the current students are using today, which is they're social, they're gaming, they're streaming, and so I decided to take that and the fact that I had resources and go off and create a company that would help bring up the millions, not just the hundreds or the thousands. There's 600 Hispanic serving institutions in the U.S. And in those 600, there's 5 million students in there. 5 million students, and I'm like, how do we touch the millions, not just the hundreds? And the only way we're going to be able to do that is, as you have learned, is the use of technology, and to use it to scale, and to be able to connect you from the classroom to career, to growth, and to the boardroom. And I called it Conectado. How do we build an ecosystem that would connect you, especially from the first phase, from classroom to career? And so we've built and we're now starting to launch the ships, a gaming metaverse experience where students, and I'll tell you right now about it in a second, but where students can come in and start navigating their journey from where they're at, using this notion that yes, they're students from the schools, but we're also um, providing them with micro certifications. And one of the micro certifications that we started with since COVID, because the medical industry um, is challenged with the talent in the next decade. So we partnered with Stanford School of Medicine. They came to us actually, and they said we're thinking about this bioinformatics boot camp, which takes the intersection of tech, computer science, data science, and medicine. And we want to start exposing that to high school students as early as high school. And we think you have access to that community, especially the Latino community. And I said, well, we're building this platform, and what if we exposed your modules inside of Conectado? So now what happens is the student would come in to Conectado, and there's this area called Campus Connect in the space. And in Campus Connect, they go into the Stanford Data Ocean where they get the bioinformatics modules. And the first set of modules are around basics of coding. And you're like, well, it's medicine, but Stanford, wants people to understand is like, no, you need to understand the basics of tech. So the basics of coding, so they get to see, not go in detail, but Pythons, R, and Pandas is their first set of modules. Then they go, okay, but how does that code get transmitted? It gets transmitted through this thing called a network or a cloud. So there's a fundamentals of cloud computing. And then it's like, okay, so how does that then get to, because ultimately I want to get information about the human body. It gets, now we go through what is the foundation of wearables. How does that wearable then connect to the information in your body? So then there's where really Stanford School of Medicine takes off, DNA, genomes, all that stuff. So they get to see that roadmap from
Yeah.
foundational tech all the way through a functional skill set that will ultimately give them so these students, even high school students, walk out with a bioinformatics credential from Stanford University, right? And so that's
This is
something that we're doing right now. In fact, we're on our second cohort of that, and they'll be graduating at the end of January.
wow. This is unbelievable. I am so glad and thank you for coming on the show to tell me about this. It's so inspiring because I'm in my own journey and I'm trying to help schools and Latinos, but I tend to be as ambitious as I can be, and I know I can. I also like to start small,
Yeah,
as an entrepreneur, right? And so I'm like, for example, I'm trying to focus on USF for
yeah,
now and saying like, how can I help the school I went to? It's a big Latino school, so it's one
right,
of the largest schools for Latinos in the United States. Is the largest. I think it's like about 20, almost 25%, and it's 60,000
mm-hmm,
people in the
mm-hmm,
school, right? And so, but but I love your ambition to be like
yeah,
millions, and it's like, how do we unlock them? They're in the school. I know that at the beginning we were talking shit and saying we don't need school, but the point is that we have all
yeah,
these kids in the school
mm-hmm,
system, right? And we need to. I love that cohort too. I know we need to love and to support uh, all of the stages of life,
yeah,
right? For the Latino community, Black community, underrepresented, whatever, right? And it's like, but the college one is like it's 5 million
yeah,
people, right? Whatever it
yeah,
is, it's like we need to help them because
yeah,
if not, we lose them to bad
yeah,
jobs. And so being able to do what you're doing, it's inspiring, and I like your ambition. It's not hundreds, it's not one, it's not thousands, it's
yeah,
millions,
yeah,
and how to get
yeah,
to it. I like how you have a view, an aggressive view of the totality of the
mm-hmm,
numbers and the population in the United States, the organizations, and what should be our approach, right? And how do we do
mm-hmm,
that? And I love the micro certification. I love the boot camps because I'm like a big connected. I'm connected with Carla Broadley from Northeastern, and she's working with the Melinda French Gates Foundation on inclusive
yeah,
computing, right? Which is the ability to connect different majors, right?
mm-hmm,
And the intersection of those things, because um, it becomes less overwhelming, right? Less
yeah,
scary, especially to someone like Latino. Like, oh, you're gonna be a computer science nerd, like engineering, hard classes, hard math, but you combine that with bioinformatics, with social service, with
yeah,
medicine, with biology, with other things, and then you start creating a much powerful combination that is less
yeah,
intense, and it's not needed. Not We don't need everybody to be computer science. We could, but not
yeah,
so. Not unnecessary
mm-hmm.
yet.
And it's what will be, so you'll start to see at the end of January, they'll I mean, they get these certifications, so they'll start putting them out on LinkedIn and stuff like that. But but the stories that those that are going through it have are just like, they didn't come from, they're just like us. They didn't come from, hey, somebody give me it on a silver platter. They all are like, they're all looking for that opening, that opportunity. And I think that was the notion of Conectado, is how do you accelerate access to opportunities? And I know we're running out of time, but I really wanted to stress this point, is also how do we build the pipeline? So Conectado, there's big aspects of it that are being built by the students. So we have partnerships with the use, like UC Berkeley. So the UC Berkeley students, the ones I mentioned earlier, not the ones that, the ones that actually went to community college and they're transfer students, they're actually building the modules that we're teaching for career readiness. The student, we have something called an AI backpack, kind of like a digital wallet where people put their credentials in. And so it also helps them navigate and then go to you, someone like yourself, and say, hey, look at my backpack. It's full of all these things. And you're looking at it going, Stanford Bioinformatics, career readiness, da, 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 da. And you're like, shit, I want this person on my team. And it's there. It's now in digital format. But the way that backpack was built was by, we have a partnership with UC Merced, which is 60% Latino at UC Merced. And the students there built they architected it, they thought it through, they built the backpack. So so we're actually showing, it's like, no, it's like, these are the kids that know that they didn't even think they could do it. Now they're doing it. They're building something that everyone could use, someone like them. So they're kind of like citizen development, right?
No, I love that, and I was that kid, right? I
Right.
was there's a program called Inroads in Tampa, and I was an Inroads student, and they trained me on Saturdays while I had this job to prep me to fit in better in the
Yeah.
job, right? And they were like kind of like uncles, like parents, like I don't know, they were like so, and I had that fire, like I need to win
Yeah.
this job. Well, Guillermo, thank you so much. It's good to hear your story, share it. We want to share it in the podcast,
Mhm.
share it to your network, and it's inspiring, right, to see what a Latino can do that they didn't learn to ski in Colorado.
Yeah, that's the one thing didn't know that, didn't know do that. Yeah.
And you know what? It was wiser. I was trying to learn skiing in the past few years, and I just busted my ACL in Deer Valley.
Yeah.
It's a
No,
you
no,
do
no,
it.
no.
Focus on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Connect the students.
Yeah.
Uh,
No,
so
you
on,
too, man. You
so
too.
impressed.
Your story is like beyond amazing, and I just want to, give so much credit to you, and to even have this an American Dream podcast, and to
Yeah,
share your story, and I'm just proud to be in the boat with you, in the ship,
yeah.
in the
No,
ship,
the ship. Where it's all
the
about the
ships.
ships. I love. I wish I would have been in the Navy so it could be cooler. But I'm like, what do you know about ships? Like, actually, I never had a ship.
Yeah.
But I love that. We'll be in touch. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll share the podcast to our
All
audience.
right. Good to talk to you.
Thank you for listening to the American Dream podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a new episode, and share the episode with your friends. Our work isn't done until everyone has equal access to their dreams.